Hidden behind Trump's complex, multi-layered, endless hallucination that his address to Congress shows he is beloved and the stock market isn't crashing and Speaker Johnson's chief of staff wasn't arrested on a DUI right after the speech and the MAGGOTS aren't furious at him and the newest polling doesn't suggest he's already lost nearly a fifth of the Trump bros under 30 and they aren't booing, they're saying, let's go bronzer. And Al Green isn't the first sign of life in the Democratic resistance. There is a much more real and much more stark truth going on here. Trump has already made his first move in the process of trying to make not loving him illegal. The attempt is underway to make protesting the Trump dictatorship against the law. Trump gassed protesters near the White House in 2020. He spent the last campaign promising anti-protesting laws, and he began to roll out the new plot this week. This was Tuesday morning before his telethon, before a crowd of supplicants, otherwise known as the Republican members of the Congress and the Senate and those Democrats not named Al Green. Quote, all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks. Thank you for your attention to this matter. A, he's really effing nuts, isn't he? B, that's about Israel and Gaza, right? I mean, that's what he has to mean by college, school, or university that allows illegal protests, right? I mean, the protests at universities, last year in particular, were just about the Middle East. And frankly, the odds are, whether you favor Israel or the Palestinians or neither, you thought at least one of those protests for somebody against somebody else, you thought one of them was inappropriate. Except, where in that statement does Trump say funding will be cut off for any college that doesn't stop Middle East protests or pro-Palestinian protests or pro-Israel protests? Where does it say sending agitators back to the country from which they came means the Middle East? Where does it say American students will be permanently expelled only if they've invaded Jewish or Muslim buildings on campus? It doesn't say that. Trump is, as always, doing a bait and switch. You are putting constraints and limits on what he wrote. He is not. This is his only skill. Let me rewrite what he wrote to reflect reality, the reality inside Trump's plans to imprison you. All federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Protests like Black Lives Matter are now illegal. Protests to save Medicare are now illegal. Protests against your favorite president, me, are now illegal. Agitators will be imprisoned. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks, no Democrats, all Musk. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Do you see it now? Trump also rolled out an element of the coming Trump protection laws during that test Tuesday night in Washington, that test of the limit of human endurance for one man praising himself by making shit up. That was his speech to the joint session. I think that speech is over by now. He patted himself on the back for new anti-deep fake laws. Did you hear that part of it? Intended to protect women against explicit fabricated sexual videos. Or more correctly, what women think is intended to protect them against such AI fabrications. But Trump could not resist. All of the misogyny, the rape culture, violence, tech bros, Tate bros, and the Elon Musk philosophy that not even a busted penile implant can stop him from propagating endlessly, all of that now married to the monstrous new elements of artificial intelligence, and the law that comes out is actually there to protect Donald Trump. Happily, He had to go off script and reveal it.
And once it passes the House, I look forward to signing that bill into law. Thank you. And I'm going to use that bill for myself, too, if you don't mind. Because nobody gets treated worse than I do online. Nobody.
Firstly, that's insane. As usual. But he is insane. And every time he appears in front of a camera and does not kill somebody or begin speaking in tongues, people forget the insanity and applaud the fact that they have forgotten the con. They forget the self-absorption. They forget his true greatness. Cheating people. The anti-deepfake porn law is there, yes, to address the explicit purpose, but it's also there and can be used so he can prosecute you for that video that got hacked into the headquarters of Housing and Urban Development the other day, the deepfake on a loop of Trump sucking Elon Musk's toes. At least I think it's a deepfake. If you have not seen this video, don't. But what else could it cover? AI and deepfakes are a cataclysmic nightmare for women and for human privacy. But yes, there actually is another worse level beyond that. It's when AI deepfakes become so prevalent that anybody can claim this or that real video is in fact a fake. I mean, that's the Trump playbook. The 2020 election was real. He claimed it's a fake. Will Trump now say, and his slaves now repeat, that the video of him looking at underage girls at Mar-a-Lago with Jeffrey Epstein in 1992 is not real? That it's just a deep fake? That it's always been a deep fake? That we've always been at war with East Asia? NBC, you say that's your video? It's a deep fake. And here's the District of Columbia U.S. Attorney Ed I'll believe anything Martin to prosecute you for it. Or for Trump to sue you for it for $20 billion. So you better make another donation to the Trump Library, the Trump Library of Money. There is no limit to what the deepfake law could conceivably allow Trump to prosecute. Make a satirical video of Trump? That's an illegal deepfake. Portray him on Saturday Night Live? It's James Austin Johnson? Prosecute him. It's Daryl Hammond? Oh, no, it's a deepfake. Prosecute him. Alec Baldwin? Definitely prosecute him, says Trump. It's a network anchor finally snapping. My money would be on Tom Lamas, who just got the NBC job yesterday, and who was, if you can imagine this, a production assistant on the first show I did at MSNBC when I returned in 2003, proving, contrary to reports, I am survivable. My money is on Tom Lamas. If Tom Lamas snaps one night and runs every pro-Nazi, Hitler-esque thing Trump has ever said, one night on NBC Nightly News, Trump could dismiss it as deepfakes and prosecute Lamas and NBC News and Comcast. And God knows they'll pay up or not defend their journalists. You sure you want this job, Tommy? Stretch this out to its extreme, and it would affect the great white whale of Trump history. What if there is a Trump P-tape? A real one? Or never mind there's a real one or that it's a P-tape. Never mind that. What if there's just something from which all of this originates? The Paul Manafort connection, the Krasnov, the spy story, which is probably crap, the compromat, which is probably not crap, all of it. What is the possibility here? That there is a smoking video of something. Just him taking a wheelbarrow full of rubles. Oh, and that's now a deep fake. And the new law will let Trump prosecute you for retweeting it. Because his allegation that it's a deep fake doesn't have to be true. None of it has ever had to be true. He just has to have the money to hire a lawyer to sue you over it or to have control over the prosecutors to arrest you over it and force you to fight back and waste a year of your life, 5, 10, 20 years of your life, $100,000, $1 million, $20 million. Do you think ABC settled over Stephanopoulos and the wording of the rape liability question because that which Trump claimed was true? Or do you think that CBS was willing to bargain over the Kamala Harris interview because what Trump was saying was true? Do you think the Des Moines Register cartoon lawsuit is true? It isn't the jury verdict that matters. It's showing you a list of legal fees you'll have to pay and your businesses that will be cut off. And let's circle back to the campus protest post. All federal funding will stop for any organization that allows anything Trump doesn't like. Agitators will be imprisoned and or permanently sent back to the country from which they come. Americans will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. You now have been warned. That is what is going to happen next. Or you won't be warned. There's no warning in Idaho, right? Teresa Borenpol protests at the public town hall held by the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee in Coeur d'Alene. And the next thing she knows, she's being manhandled, carried out by 3 men dressed in black. They are wearing no badges, no uniforms, no IDs. They don't even have security emblems on. They try to zip tie her. And then the sheriff of the town steps in and threatens to pepper spray her. And he records all this on video as she repeatedly asks what are literally black shirts to identify themselves, and they refuse. The sheriff has posted that video along with a photo of himself and Governor Abbott of Texas grinning, and a photo of himself at the Trump inauguration alongside, members of the New York Police Department. The police chief has begun an investigation of the company that sent the Rent-A-Gestapo and the Republicans who hired that company, and the charges against Ms. Borenpol are being dropped. There is that. The charges are being dropped this time, and who will next be manhandled by unmarked security while elected law enforcement officials videotape it like RFK Jr. would videotape a bear he killed in Central Park, or maybe my ex-girlfriend? Who's next to be manhandled that way? Congressman Al Green, perhaps? Congressman Al Green, now my frontrunner and first choice, and it could change, but now my frontrunner for the Democratic nomination for president in 2028, because he's the only Democrat I can verify is still breathing. Boycotting that address was, as I may have mentioned before it happened, a move from the year 1968. Because, of course, not going somewhere is an invisible form of protest. Did you see me? I wasn't there. Holding up those paddle signs with the unreadable words on them, that was the absolute dumbest thing Democrats have ever done. I mean, at least since they stopped backing segregation in the 60s. They looked like they were rich idiots bidding at a charity auction to raise money to repaint the beachside cabanas in the Hamptons. Or they looked like ping pong players who had gotten lost. I mean, it was invisible and impotent. You want to bring props to a congressional speech in the era of Boebert or Green or whoever it was suing for the right not to be scanned for guns as you go into the congressional chamber? You want to bring a prop? Bring a goddamn bazooka. Or at least bring smoke bombs. I mean, it's Capitol Hill. According to Trump, you're allowed to attack it and try to kill people inside of it. That's the Trump doctrine. No, little paddles with the word no on it didn't quite cut it. But Al Green cut it. Al Green got it exactly right. And shame on every Democrat past whom he was walked out who did not stand up and walk out with him in protest, which would be 100 goddamn % of them. If you think walking out on Trump will somehow cost you the non-existent middle and damage your reelection chances and get you written up in the wrong newsletters, you're wrong, but I get it. You're a terrified, textbook, fungible, useless politician. But to not see, as it unfolds in front of you, as a win-win, rising to the defense of a colleague whose outburst was half the Boebert Green Karen honking and a quarter of Joe Wilson's racist "you lie" scream against Obama in 2009. If you don't see that as it happens in front of you, hey, I'm going to stand up with him. I'll get my name in the papers next to him. Oh my God, martyrdom points. If you don't see that, that means you're just a moron, Democrat. The optics of unidentified goons ordering a 77-year-old congressman and his cane out while J.D. Free Speech Vance smirks and applauds with his mincing little trained seal flippers is the essence of an organic viral video that would win awards. The optics of 10 or 20 or 30 Democrats then spontaneously rising with him would have won the night. And I hate with every fiber of my being the idea that we have now that we have to win the night. But Trump is getting to build his cask of Amontillado wall around you, brick by goddamned brick, because he won the night, night after night for much of 2024. We have to play this game or he will kill us with it. So get in the game or get up from those seats in the House and from the Senate and start walking, and don't stop until you are neck high in the Potomac. Matter of fact, don't stop when you are neck high in the Potomac. We can replace you and no one will know you were ever there. And by the way, of course, the Republicans, who did not face any of this when it was Republicans doing this to Joe Biden or Barack Obama, because the Democrats would never consider doing this. The Republicans are talking about censuring Representative Green. There is a vote on this morning, unless they think better of it and make it all go away. And I guarantee you any Democrat who goes along with this is finished. In fact, I promise you, I will do everything I can to finish them. More importantly, I don't think the censure motion is going anywhere because it was floated by Speaker Mike Johnson, and his chief of staff was so affected by Trump's speech, he was literally arrested on a DUI right after that. Well, it was either the Trump speech or the chief got a look at the porn consumption report that Johnson shares with his own son on their app. So Johnson has other things to worry about. It's a mighty ugly Johnson you have there, Republicans. Incidentally, Johnson's chief of staff's DUI, that was 3 hours after Johnson, at the speech, trotted out the widow of a man killed by an undocumented immigrant in a DUI. Back to the point, we need people who understand politics and protest and optics, and who are not afraid to get walked out by the authorities, and are not afraid to get arrested if need be. As Al Green said, as they brought this up yesterday, I'll do it again. He didn't have to say he's not afraid to get arrested. If I could do one thing that transcends time and space, I would clone John Lewis and put about 300 of him into Democratic politics right now. Oh, you think this is bad? Did you see when they beat me over the head on the bridge? Chuck Schumer having trouble with traffic is not a great crisis. In the months to come, in the years to come, if there are years to come, we are going to need Democratic leaders who are not afraid to get arrested. And not arrested for getting drunk after a Trump speech and driving into an official Capitol vehicle either. And so far, the list of Democrats who I'm confident in there's Al Green. I think AOC, but she stayed home. She thought that was the right move. And there are others who probably looking at it again would go, I should have been there and walked out with him. But really, you could have seen this coming. And you could have been there and walked out with Al Green. And guess what? You are back to square one because you didn't. And so Trump largely won the night. In football parlance, he threw 276 interceptions and fumbled 114 times. And because the already moronic Washington press corps has now been dumbed down even further because of market conditions and naked pusillanimous fear, the toadies at the right-wing site Politico rushed to heil Trump. I want to read you two examples. I mean, this is John Harris, very serious journalist, reminding us that they all approach covering events like this, the raw-boned truth of which is an insane man who just sold this country out to Russia, talks longer than anybody else in history, all of it about himself, says he's done better than George Washington, and lies literally dozens of times while making a threat to prosecute dissenters, which you, by the way, completely missed. They all approach covering this with one thought and one thought only. Not, have I captured the headline here, or the essence, or the hidden news story, but rather, what if I write something different than what everybody else writes? I'll be mocked. John Harris. Trump, he writes, again showed why the presidency is such a powerful platform from which to wage national arguments, even as predecessor Joe Biden was never able to use it to good effect. By contrast, Trump in his showmanship, the boasts and bluster, the indignation and insults, the ability to channel popular frustrations, demonstrated anew why he has vexed opponents of both parties for the past decade, unquote. Somebody wrote something like that about Hitler's first speech as chancellor. We don't know who that somebody was because I would expect he wound up in a concentration camp. Oh, the boasts and the bluster. Nothing about all the dead from COVID because Trump didn't want his numbers to look bad. Nothing about calling Liz Warren Pocahontas in the equivalent of the State of the Union address. Nothing. Oh, demonstrated anew why he has vexed opponents of both parties for the past decade. Then there's this from the right-wing site Politico's Rachel Bade. That's bad only with an E at the end. Congratulations, attention-hungry House Democrats. You stole the spotlight from Donald Trump on Tuesday night. Your reward? Undercutting your own message in the fight against Trump, making your party look small and desperate, and making Trump look like the commanding figure he desperately wants to be. She's an idiot. In its same massive vowel movement, Politico praised the celebration of disruption, praised the defying of backlash. Disruption? You mean Al Green? No, by Trump. Incompetent, democracy-destroying, front-running bastards at Politico, and not just at Politico, because they all move around. Somebody just left NBC for Politico, and I think somebody from Politico just went to NBC. And I will spare you more of this with one exception, because this is one of the all-time greatest, worst takes ever. This is, and the author is not a surprise, but the quality of how bad this is his Mona Lisa. His Mona Lisa of stupidity. I'll read it first and then tell you who said this. This speech will play very well for Trump. Yes, he has repeated a whole lot of lies he tells all the time. But he's also poignantly highlighted trans issues, wokeness, Laken Riley, etc. And those are 80-20 issues for the public in his favor. The speech is a masterwork of shareable content and moments. Trump is reality TV show producer and star, and he is showing it tonight. Almost got into Rich Lowry, little starbursts in Sarah Palin's eyes territory at the end there. You could almost see the guy who wrote this doing a Joni Ernst. But the author, there can only be one. Chris Cillizza. At the heart of all this is this truth. If Trump agreed to let Putin attack Washington, D.C. with tactical nukes, and the Democrats held a last-second news conference calling Trump a traitor and a murderer, half the Washington press corps would rise to Trump's defense because he cannot shake the idea that there are still rules. There are rules? There are no rules here. There have not been rules in Washington for a decade. But they still need, they still cannot function without cubbyholes for everything. There are to them only 11 different stories in Washington. And whatever this is, it has to be one of them. You can't be deliberately manipulating the stock market by turning tariffs on and off. That's not one of these 11 stories. Well, how would we cover that? Well, we can't. Don't cover it at all. Okay. So, Al Green's audacity and forward-thinking and pro-democracy courage is reduced to disrespecting the presidency. I have bad news for you, Washington, D.C. press corps. There is no presidency. There is no president. The office of President of the United States, for all practical purposes, no longer exists. There is just a madman, a senile bully no one has had the courage to stand up to, rapidly losing his remaining shreds of self-control. There is no president to disrespect. There is only a dictator building that wall around us and around you, the media, and around the courts, and you, the media, and the courts, and most of the Democrats. You guys are busy handing him the effing bricks. Also of interest here, I teased at the beginning some startling but happy polling news for you, and I will deliver. How about 6 weeks into the dictatorship, and Trump has already seen his support among men under 30 dive deeply underwater. Trump bro, you've been doged. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Postscripts to the news. Some headlines, some updates, some snark. Still ahead of us, of course, worst persons. And Nancy Mace was today years old before she learned there was a difference between a boy lion and a girl lion. Next. This is the Countdown Podcast, and these are the places where there's news. Dateline Harvard Yard, headquarters of the research company Social Space, actually located at Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They tell Puck News that it is faint at this point, but the writing is on the wall for Trump's support with men under 30, possibly the pivotal point of the 2024 election. Quoting Puck, 6 weeks into the new presidency, John Della Volpe of Social Space said that Trump's support among young voters is already taking an unambiguous hit. Overall favorability with the younger voters has dropped 7 points since his January poll, the weekend before the inauguration. He came into office with a 50% favorable among Gen Z. He's now at 43. Since mid-January, Trump's favorable rating has dropped most significantly among young rural voters, down 17 points. Independents down 13 points. White women down 10 points, and women overall down 10 points. At the same time, Trump's standing among young white men has remained about the same. But in January, 62% of men under 30 had approved of Trump's handling of the economy. Now just 48% approve. That's a drop of 14 points in 1 month. On handling inflation, Trump has taken a 15-point hit, dropping from 55% approval before the inauguration to 40% today. And as Puck additionally notes, those bad numbers, and they are actually horrible, they are themselves 3 weeks worse and 3 weeks old now. These numbers were conducted in the middle of February, so who knows what the impact of all of this nonsense about tariffs and everything else has factored in here. Trump is in trouble with the people who put him over the top. Dateline Kyiv, speaking of which, headline, Putin pauses U.S. military aid to Ukraine. In case that got right past you, I'll just say it again. Putin pauses U.S. military aid to Ukraine. Let me explain something as I understand it about what may not be fully evident at first glance to the situation in Ukraine on the one subject, peacekeepers, that is so desperately important to both sides. Why is Putin desperate to make sure peacekeepers and other truce enforcers, if there is one, if there is a deal, why there are no Americans? Why is Zelensky just as insistent that there be at least some American troops there doing something to keep the peace? Well, there must be Americans because otherwise all of the peacekeepers would be European. When Putin violates any ceasefire, well, he can't shoot Americans, not yet. He wants to fight Europeans. He would fight Europeans. He would shoot European peacekeepers. He wants, in fact, an excuse to fight Europeans. That's the whole point of Ukraine. It is a warm-up for going into Poland and other parts of Europe. That's the whole reason we have been defending Ukraine for 3 years. The whole point that Trump does not understand. The whole reenactment of 1938 and 1939 that Trump could never understand in a million years because there's no cash in it for him. The peacekeepers, if they are not American, guarantee war in Europe, which is why Zelensky and smart people want Americans as part of any peacekeeping force. Dateline Washington, shocking, I know. I hope you're sitting down for this part. But did you know Trump's cabinet and staff are full of absolute flaming morons? I mean, if there were such a thing, who would you pick first in the moron fantasy draft of the Trump administration? Would you go with Alina Habba, White House advisor on parking lots, who has just slimed veterans?
Starting to think about maybe some of those veterans who worked for the federal government and maybe what the administration can do to at least help salvage their lives?
Well, as you know, we care about veterans tremendously. I mean, that's something the president has always cared about. Anybody in blue, anybody that serves this country. But at the same time, we have taxpayer dollars. We have a fiscal responsibility to use taxpayer dollars to pay people that actually work. That doesn't mean that we forget our veterans by any means. We are going to care for them in the right way, but perhaps they're not fit to have a job at this moment or not willing to come to work. And we can't, I wouldn't take money from you and pay somebody and say, sorry, they're not going to come to work. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, they're not qualified or ready or willing to take an important job like chief advisor on bimbos to the White House. Now, as if he hadn't already made it unsafe for any American official to travel in Europe, there's another candidate, J.D. Vance. He may be the number one draft choice in the moron draft because he may have single-handedly canceled the Trump state visit to meet the King of England. He may or may not have meant British troops and British wars and British dead, but they sure think he did when he said this.
If you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years.
The problem for JV, is there are so many skeletons in his closet, he may have to have extra closets put into his closet. Give me like 500 to 1 odds on this, and I'll predict right now and take a bet that he resigns from that office before the term expires. And lastly, in the Derby of Dumb, in the race to be the first draft choice in our fantasy league, is Caroline Leavitt, the former star center fielder of the softball team at her college in wherever the hell it was. She had just said that she thought God had given her a special skill, the ability to communicate. And here she is, right after that, communicating that Trump's address to Congress would be attended by a dead guy.
There will be everyday American heroes in attendance. Stephanie Diller, whom you mentioned, who lost her husband in the line of duty at the hands of an illegal immigrant. You have Mark Fogel, who, of course, because of President Trump's peace through strength efforts, were returned from Russian captivity. Corey Comparator, who lost his life protecting his family in Butler, Pennsylvania.
That's the firefighter who was shot when they tried to shoot Trump. I don't know. If you have one of the top 3 draft choices, you can't go wrong with any of these 3 idiots. And Dateline, Des Moines, Iowa. Senator Joni Ernst was a late yes on Pete Hegseth's nomination. There's all kinds of guesses now as to why she said yes, and this as the reason. It sounds good, but it doesn't hold up to logic, because if this had been the reason, then it wouldn't have come out. Still, it came out, and it's effing funny. In fact, it's effing hilarious. In 2014, Joni Ernst ran for the Senate in Iowa and put up a controversial campaign ad in which she boasted that she had experience castrating hogs. Castrating hogs. And thus, she would be an expert in Washington in finding and getting rid of pork. Now, ProPublica reports this. Earlier this year, the Air Force revealed that the general who oversaw its lobbying before Congress had inappropriate romantic relationships with 5 women, including 3 who worked on Capitol Hill. Major General Christopher Finnerty's colleagues told investigators the relationships were highly inappropriate, as they could give the Air Force undue influence in Congress. I honestly felt sick to my stomach, one said, according to a report about the investigation, because it just felt so sleazy. Well, no doubt that's why it was so much fun. But one of the women whose relationship with Finnerty was scrutinized by the Inspector General was Senator Joni Ernst, according to 2 sources with knowledge of the investigation. ProPublica continues, the Iowa Republican and combat veteran, you bet, is one of the most influential voices on the Hill about the military. I see. And she sits on... Oh, there's more to that. She sits on the Senate's Armed Services Committee, which oversees the Pentagon and plays a crucial role in setting its annual budget. And yes, I'd make exactly the same kind of 13-year-old's jokes if this was about a man. 3 other sources told ProPublica that around 2019, Ernst had a previous romantic relationship with a legislative affairs official for a different branch of the military, the Navy. There's a joke there about swimming to troop ships. We'll just let that go. But I'm not letting this one go. You're telling me that Joni Ernst went to D.C. to get all the pork she could find? Wait, it's worse. That 2014 castrating pigs ad? Joni Ernst's punchline, which she delivered herself, was about her goal when she got to Washington, which was, in fact, quote, "Let's make 'em squeal." You bet. And finally, believe it or not, there's still more new idiots to talk about. The roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. Here are the nominees. The bronze worst, Jeff Shell. My old pal from Fox, Jeff Shell. Jeff Shell and I worked with Lauren Sanchez at Fox. He's the incoming boss of CBS after NBC fired him over a woman. He'll be the boss of CBS whenever the Paramount Skydance merger finally happens, or he's the boss right now. Legally, my former friend, whose defense of his deception was once, "You should have known I was lying," is, according to Oliver Darcy at Status, already pressuring CBS News to settle Trump's bullying lawsuit so that Trump doesn't corruptly hold up that merger I just mentioned between the Paramount Company and Skydance. Couple problems here. First of all, the lawsuit is bullshit. This is that Kamala Harris editing thing, and now the dictator wants $10 billion in damages for something that didn't have a goddamn thing to do with him. But secondly, Jeff Shell isn't the head of CBS because Paramount and Skydance haven't merged. And the Skydance people are legally not supposed to be involved in CBS decisions, let alone running things until the merger is complete. As Oliver Darcy puts it, quote, by attempting to influence decisions at CBS News, Shell may have erred and potentially opened Paramount and Skydance up to regulatory scrutiny. Well, you should have known I was lying. Now, this sounds awfully familiar to some of us because 15 years ago, Jeff Shell was one of the top executives at Comcast in the same situation. Comcast was about to merge with NBC, take over NBC. That was a huge, slow merger. And once again, Comcast people were not supposed to have any say on day-to-day stuff at NBC until merger day, which was January 1st, 2011. And yet, what do I find in my files? A series of emails to me from Jeff Shell at his Comcast address encouraging me not to leave MSNBC and to hang in there and not worry about Jeff Zucker, and telling me how much fun he and I would have together if I stayed at NBC when he would come in and run it. The dates on these emails? Well, sir, a couple of them are July 29th, 2010. 5 months before Jeff Shell was actually allowed to try to influence stuff at NBC or the people there. Huh. So maybe his previous experience doing this is why he got the CBS gig. Runner-up, appeaser Governor Jared Polis of Colorado. I keep telling you, playing nice with the fascists is not only going to get you thrown out of the party, it's also going to get you run over first by the fascists. Polis praised Robert F. Kennedy Jr., then he went on Vichy Joe on MSNBC. On there, he praised the Trump and Musk efforts to gut FEMA, and how have they repaid his, quote, bipartisanship, unquote. Republicans are angry that Colorado prosecuted Trump vote denier Tina Peters. They have demanded Governor Polis pardon Tina Peters, or Trump will try to cut off federal funds to Colorado. Do you see what happens, Jared? Do you see what happens, Jared, when you... Fill it in yourself. By the way, Trumpists, go ahead, try to cut off federal funds to a blue state. All the other blue states will then cut off their funds to the federal government, and your president will be overthrown before the end of the month by MAGA because people in the red states will start starving without the blue state money. But our winner, on top of a field day of great candidates, Nancy Mace, Congresswoman of North Carolina, although probably not of this earth. How many dumb things has she done in office so far, starting with telling the "I skipped morning sex with my unmarried partner to be here on time" story at Senator Tim Scott's prayer breakfast. It was, we will have sex later, Reverend. The unmarried partner she lived with, and then there were loud threats of lawsuits when they broke up and argued over who actually owned their house. That was another story involving Nancy Mace. Well, this isn't quite that graphic, but in many ways it's really much more disturbing. Nancy Mace has posted on social media an animated video of a lion, the wind blowing through its hair, along with her comment, quote, "Women want someone who will go to battle for them. I am your lion. Hear me roar." The lion in Nancy Mace's tweet is a male. "I am your lion. Hear me roar." And the lion she is a guy. Nancy, well, maybe now we know why she broke up with the boyfriend Mace. Today's other worst person in the world. done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, the musical directors of Countdown, arranged, produced, and performed most of our music. Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards. Mr. Ray was on the guitars, bass, and drums. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2. That was written by Mitch Warren Davis, and it appears courtesy of ESPN Inc. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend John Dean. Everything else was, as ever, my fault. So that's Countdown for today. Just 1,417 days until the scheduled end of his lame duck, lame-brained term, unless Musk removes Trump sooner, where the actuarial tables do. The next scheduled countdown is Monday. As always, bulletins as the news warrants. Remember, impeach Trump. It won't work now. It will, however, win the Democrats the midterms. If we have midterms. Till next time, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.